So those are the trends that I think are important this year in 2017. A lot of them I think were important last year and will again be important next year as well. These are big time trends. They are not fads. They are not small things. These are the kind of skills and talents that are going to help you get employed and stay employed for the next 5, 10, even 15 years. So with that in mind and some of those trends under our belt, I just want to spend a few minutes maybe talking about the career hacks, the tips and tricks to, you know what, expanding your career and maybe even getting hired. If that's your goal, if that's your job, if that's your resolution this year is to get a new job in a field that you're really excited and passionate about, well, you know, first of all, that passion, that excitement needs to come through. And every time you interview and everyone you talk to about your job, I can't, it's not even here listed on my slide, but I can't overstate the importance of passion, visible passion, passion that people can understand you have for what you want. You want to bring your best to the table, and that includes, yes, your passion, but that also includes your best examples of work. I think one of the most important things that we can do in IT is that we can create demonstrations or examples of what we know. As a software developer, this is fairly straightforward and fairly easy. For years, we've been doing this. We sit down and we develop, we build software, and then we show it off to the people that we're trying to get to hire. So we say, look, this is what I did in my spare time. This is what I did as a hobby. Well, that's really available to everybody now. And again, this goes back to the cloud. I always go back to the cloud. Anyone can build a sample demonstrative system of their skill set, whether it's software or hardware. If you're spinning up and setting up virtual machines, administering Windows servers, you can do all sorts of crazy cool things very, very cheaply, very inexpensively. So in the past, it may not have been possible to show how you could set up a reverse proxy server because you would need to buy a couple of different servers and connect them up to the web, and you need to have your router configured. And you know what? Now you can spin up with a few minutes of work and a few dollars. You can spin up a reverse proxy server in the cloud, and you can talk to an employer about what you've done there. So I want to make sure that that's really understood. When I say bring your best to the table, I'm talking about bringing your best work to the table. You want to exude that passion by demonstrating that you wanted to, and you did in fact sit down and figure out how to do what you were doing. Another really important point, another cool hack, I think something that really also demonstrates this passion, is to engage with the people who are that you're talking to about jobs. And this applies both to interviewers, people that you are interviewing with, as well as just the network of people around you. And that's my next point actually, is network, network, network. So you don't want to be passive. You don't want to accept things that you come. You want to be proactive and engage. You want to ask pointed questions of people. You want to know, what is it you're doing? What is it you need done? How are you expecting to do that? How can I help you do that? This is going to not only demonstrate your passion and your knowledge, but it's also going to encourage people to understand and believe that you are someone who goes out and gets what they want and asks for what they want. And it's really important when you are trying to get that new job, when you're trying to get that new raise, when you're trying to change fields, to demonstrate that you're the kind of person who is willing to engage, who's willing to put that first foot forward and try to find a way to engage with different things. And then my last point, all right, this can seem a little bit self-serving, but I honestly, genuinely believe this last point: never stop learning. One of my favorite getting hired stories is when I got hired for this exact job with CBT Nuggets. And I was on the phone with the interviewers, and they asked me if I'd be able to record some training on a particular topic, and I said, sure, absolutely. And they said, how much do you know about it? And I said, well, I don't actually know anything about it at all, but you know what? I'll learn about it. That's the easy part. I will sit down and I will learn it, and I will be able to turn around and train on it. And I really believe that, and that's really, really important. None of us are born knowing all of this stuff. No one just gets it injected into their brain like Neo in the Matrix. That's not the way it happens. That's not the way it works. We have to sit down and we have to put in the time and the effort to learn it. And being willing to put in that time and effort to learn it is something that looks good. That is absolutely an IT career hack. You want to be able to look at the interviewer. You want to be able to look at the hiring manager, and you want to be able to say, yeah, you know what? I'll learn that. I can learn that. I do it all the time. I learn this, I learn that, and I'll learn that as well, and that's not an issue. That's the least that you should be worried about. So never stop learning. It's so important, and I can't stress enough just how important learning is, particularly in the field of IT, right, which is constantly changing and always updating, and we're always feeling like we need to learn a little bit more. So those are some of my IT career hacks, my trends that I think you should be looking forward to. I really want to turn it over to you guys. I want to know what your questions are in this field. It's a new year, and you should all be excited and pumped up and ready to, hit that gym and figure out what we're going to do. So I encourage you, please, to start asking some questions. You can use the chat panel here, and we're going to start going through them. I'm going to start taking a look here. And I'm just going to read the first question here from, and I apologize, I'm going to mispronounce your name, but from Sakir Sakari. It says, how to get ahead in a company that IT isn't a core business, like a retail company. This is a great question. I love this question because I'll tell you what, I've had a lot of jobs in my career. That's mostly because I got fired from a lot of jobs. But I've had a lot of jobs in my career, and almost none of them have been in a company that focused on IT. I've worked in finance, I've worked in healthcare, I've worked in insurance. All of these things, the IT was there to support the job. Even here at CBT Nuggets is supporting, the IT supports the delivery of our material, but IT is not what we do. So how do you get ahead in a company like that? Well, the first thing that you need to recognize is that your value added comes through your clients, through your stakeholders. So what is your job there inside of that company? Typically, it's to support, well, in a small company, you may be supporting the entire company, but in a larger company, you may be supporting a department. When I was at the bank, the finance department was my client. And what I made sure was not that my skills didn't exist in a vacuum, that it wasn't just like, hey, I know how to do this, I know how to do this, and I know how to do this. It was, I know how to do this, and that's going to be great because I can apply it to the client. The finance department can use this skill, or I can use this skill to support the finance department in this way. You always need to be presenting your value add. If you're familiar with features and benefits method of selling, it's not just talking about the feature. It's not just what you know, it's what the benefit is. What does that do for you, for the clients, and for the company? Because a lot of times when IT is not the core business, IT is seen like a cost center. It's seen like something they dump money into that they just have to spend money on. And you need to turn that around. You need to flip that script so that your employers see the IT services as something that can help make them more profitable, as something that helps makes them better at what they do. Let's see, next question here. And I don't know if maybe, Jack, if you want to start selecting out questions so I'm not sitting here scrolling through them trying to read them as we go through here. Elena Scher says, what do you mean by development? Is it coding? Typically, yeah. When I talk about development, I'm talking about software development, and that means coding. That means programming. Programming happens in a lot of different ways today, and it happens in a lot of different places. Typically, people think about coding as sitting down and hammering out code to write a program. That's kind of the default, I guess the default idea of software development, but that's just no longer the only way we're involved with it anymore. Network devices now are more and more relying on the Python programming language, for instance, to configure those devices. So coding has become a network configuration, a network setup tool. Configuration deployment, things like Chef and Puppet, if you're familiar with those, these are system configuration tools that require or rely on their own coding system in order to code system configuration. So you are writing Chef recipes, you are writing Puppet scripts in order to set up and tear down different systems. So system administration is now a coding thing. And also, when I talk about development and when I talk about coding, there is a whole ecosystem of ideas and concepts that you need to know that go along with it. These are things like unit testing and source code control, and even rolling back, ways to develop a test that can be rolled back. So all of those things, all of those features are becoming more and more important, and we should be we need to incorporate those into our day-to-day jobs, our day-to-day activities, and we need to understand how we can work with those different things. So I hope that answers your question. And it looks like Jack is flagging questions for me here. So I'm just going to go ahead and read the next one that's flagged. From Desiree, I'm 39 and have loved computers my whole life. Hey, me too, Desiree. I've dabbled with computers, networks, and I am finally at the point where I can study and try to change careers, which is awesome. Am I too old? I feel like there are a ton of youngsters out there. You are not too old, first of all. Absolutely, you're not too old, and there are a ton of youngsters out there. Those darn youngsters. um, no, Desiree, you are absolutely not too old, and you have some distinct advantages over those youngsters. Notably, you've got experience in the field, and not necessarily in the field of IT and in the field of computers, but you have experience working. You understand what it means to work a job, to show up every day. You understand how to expand your knowledge and expand your skills. And most importantly, you are working towards learning these things. You're studying and you're learning this stuff. And that's the thing that people are going to value and that people are going to recognize. When you can show up and you can say, you know what, this is something that I wanted to do, this is something that I love doing, and this is what I did in order to get there. And you can, whether it's CBT nuggets, whether it's certifications, whether it's secondary education, night school, whatever the case is, bringing that to the table and bringing that to someone and saying, look, this is how I did it and this is what I wanted to do, that's the important part. No one's going to look at you and say, oh, you're too old to do this. You know what? Go to any IT office and you're going to see plenty of people that are twice our age and even older back there, because what's valuable is the things that you know and the attitude that you bring to the job, not our age. Let's see, there's another one here from Bal Sharma. What programming language would you suggest to learn? All of them, Bal. I suggest you learn all of them. But, all right, fine, that's not especially realistic. My favorite programming language today, this is, who knows, ask me again in a year and it'll be different, but my favorite language right now is absolutely Python. Python is an enormously important language, and it's growing in use every day. Python has recently overtaken Java, which would be my next answer to that question, as the most used language in learning systems and learning environments. So academia, university, etc., are relying more and more on Python. Python is becoming the de facto language for network configuration. I mentioned that a little bit earlier, but network devices are starting to be programmed and configured and set up using the Python programming language instead of their own proprietary programming languages. And Python is easy. It's really, really simple and straightforward. It's easy to read, it's easy to learn, and it introduces a lot of the programming concepts that you need to know when you want to learn a more complex language such as Java or .NET, which would be the other two that I would recommend. Java is obviously widely used. It's used all over the place. A lot of the programming that is happening on IoT devices that I talked about is happening with Java. And .NET is a great language to learn because it's so powerful. It's also fairly easy to use. And it's fairly marketable. I happen to know that people are hiring .NET developers all the time. So my answer to that would be Python, but Java and .NET would also be enormously important languages to learn how to program in it as well. Any of those three and you are going to be happy having learned what you learned. Next question, how do I develop a career path as a hospitality IT? So if I'm understanding, hospitality is actually one of the few industries I've never worked in. Well, I did actually. I washed dishes at a hotel when I was 17 years old. But I assume that's what you mean are things like hotels, the hospitality industry. I would focus less on the industry itself and more on the skills that you want to develop as an IT professional. Hospitality is going to be no different than finance or healthcare or anyone else. They are going to rely on servers. Those servers are going to run software. They're going to need, maybe CRM software. There's probably hospitality-specific software out there. I'm going to go ahead and guess that that would be helpful to learn or helpful to at least be familiar with and know about. But I think the important thing is to demonstrate that you have a solid IT foundation and a solid ability to learn what you need to learn. I've certainly walked into jobs where they said, you know what, this is the field that we're in. Have you ever worked in this field before? And I said no, but that's okay because I can learn it. And that's I think that's the right attitude to take to hospitality or any other field there. Kevin said hello from Columbia. Hello, Kevin. Hello from upstate New York on the shores of Lake Ontario here. Shans wants to know how to get in the data storage field. Data storage, oh man, what a big area today. So that's a really great question. I think the best way to get into data storage is to start looking at the cloud. I know, I'm hammering on about the cloud, like cloud. But you know what? The cloud has made data storage, it has upended the data storage question. There is absolutely no doubt that over the past 5 years, data storage has exploded, both because A, we're generating way more data, like I talked about with the big data, but also we are able to take advantage of these enormous data centers, the huge budgets of people like Google and Microsoft and Amazon so that we can store data efficiently as well as in massive, massive quantities on the systems, on their systems, their public IT service, their public cloud services. So that's one place I would look. I would start to look at the big data offerings from the major public cloud providers, that being Google, Microsoft, and Amazon. They all have different big data storage ways, and you know what? They have a lot of different ways to store data, whether it's highly structured relational data versus unstructured blob and binary data, that kind of thing. I would also look into big data analysis tools, and I'm talking about things like BigQuery. That's Google's big data analysis. I'm trying to think of what AWS's big data Redshift, AWS Redshift, which is a big data analysis tool that's really could be important to learn. I would start learning about those tools and how you can use those to, again, not just store the data, which is obviously so critical and so important, but also to pull it out and analyze it. I think people are always going to want that at least as much as they are going to want to know how to store the data, because data storage, frankly, is becoming more and more of a very routine thing with the expansion of these cloud offerings. Well, I lost my questions here. Let's see if I can... all right, well, I'll just grab the next one. Anthony Taylor, what certifications would you recommend for someone entering the IT field professionally for the first time? I've recently just completed the CompTIA A+, and I'm considering the Network Plus and Security Plus next. First of all, awesome job on getting your A+. That's a great certification. That's a lot of work. Congratulations, Anthony. That is absolutely one of the first certifications that I would recommend. A+, Security Plus, and Network Plus are all really great basic certifications that people are going to look at and recognize and respond to on your resume. As far as which other certifications I might recommend, it really depends on what area of IT you want to get into. If you're going to be in systems administration, I think the Office 365 certifications are hugely important. Office 365 is the cloud implementation of the Microsoft Office product, but it's so much more than that. It includes SharePoint Online and Exchange Online, so you can run your entire email service in the cloud. Really huge, wide, and massively growing, massively in-demand cloud service certification. If you're headed more down the network route, you got to start to look at your CCNA and CCIE certifications. Those I know a little bit less about, and I've never been in that particular area, but we have a lot of that material here at CBT Nuggets as well. So I think, Anthony, it really depends on where you want to go from there, but without a doubt, the CompTIA certs, A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus are a great place to start. Sergio wants to know recommendation when you feel stuck at your current position with very limited time for study and learning. I get that, Sergio. That's always tough when you want to learn, but you don't have the time, right? Your job is taking up all your time. Maybe you've got a family you have to deal with. Find ways to carve out some very small chunks of study and learning. Sorry, I'm going to sound like a little bit like a sales pitch here, and I don't mean to do that. I apologize. But CBT Nuggets offers a lot of great ways to do that. First of all of our nuggets, that's what the word nugget means, are meant to be consumed in small, easy-to-view chunks. So recently we're limiting them to the 12 to 15-minute length, but even before that they were only upwards of 20 minutes or so. And the idea is that you can sit down and watch one, learn one or two things while you're watching it, and then be done. So while you're eating your lunch, while you're washing the dishes, I actually watch nuggets while I'm doing the dishes. You know, in these little moments, in these little times, we offer a lot of ways that you can look at that stuff, including on your mobile devices, on your tablets and your cell phones. So I don't know, maybe you have a bus ride or a train ride into work every day. Download some videos onto your mobile device and watch them there. It's definitely a challenge. I understand where you're coming from, and I hear you. But I think the thing to do is to find ways to carve out that time. Now the other thing to do, I think, is to turn around and ask your current employer for that time. If it's the kind of employer who's going to find value from you learning, and you know what, they absolutely should. Every employer should find value from learning. Present the case to them. Say, look, I need dedicated time to study, to learn new skills and new techniques that I can bring to this job to help us be more productive. You shouldn't be afraid to bring that case to your employer. So I think those are a couple of ways that you can address that, or hopefully help deal with that. Talking about Linux, what distribution is more used on a business environment? What version do you recommend? That's a dangerous question, right? The Linux distribution wars. I think that you see there's a couple of big ones that are used in the business environment. Red Hat, RHEL, Red Hat Enterprise Linux. You see Ubuntu being more and more used in an enterprise environment, and you see Debian being used in the enterprise environment. Those, I think, are the big ones. I'll be perfectly honest, I'm not the best person to ask about that. Sean Powers is actually our Linux guru here, and he's a guy who can better answer that question. But I think what you're going to find is that most of the distros have some presence in the enterprise field. Those are the three that I run into most often. Maybe it's because those are the ones that are being used in the cloud. I don't know what the case is, but those are the ones that I'm really seeing a lot: Ubuntu, Red Hat Enterprise Linux, and Debian. I don't have a version recommendation. I think that there are obviously pros and cons to all of the different distros for Linux. They all do different things. Most of the distros even have multiple iterations of their own distribution that are better and worse at different things. What's important is that you understand how it works and you understand what its strengths are and what its weaknesses are. So if you're going to settle on a version or you're going to settle on a distro for some particular task, understand why you're choosing that distro first. Don't just necessarily pick the one that you're most comfortable with. Pick the one that's right for the job at hand, and then learn what you need to learn so that you are comfortable with it. And there go my questions again. This interface is giving me some trouble here. What is more important, education degree or certifications? That's a good question. We get that a lot. I think we've had some, we even have some YouTube videos that are answering that exact question. That's from Darius. They're equally important. They are both important. Both your education, your degrees from university, your traditional education, as well as your technical certifications. You kind of need both. The education is going to give you a solid foundation and a lot of fundamentals and a lot of conceptual things that you need to know, whereas the certifications are going to give you a lot more hands-on experience with specific targeted things that you need to know. Here's a little secret. Here's a little a thing that no one likes to tell. Neither of those things, neither your degree from university nor your technical certification, are going to give you a very good idea of what it's like to really have the job and to do the job on a day-to-day basis. Unfortunately, the only way that you can learn about that is to actually do the job on a day-to-day basis. So when you bring these things to the table, when they're on your resume, you need to be able to answer. You need to be able to say, you know what, this is what I've done to achieve these things, but that's not where it stops for me. That's not the end of the line for me. This is what I want to do in order to get where I need to be valuable in a day-to-day operation. Education degree versus certifications, it's going to be a never-ending argument. I think that they're both really critically important for different reasons and they achieve different things. But if you have one without the other, you're probably going to be handicapping yourself a little bit. Arafat wants to know, what do you suggest, getting expert level at one thing or learning many skills? I'm always a many skills kind of guy, Arafat. I'm not going to lie. That's kind of my thing. That's what I do. I've always been a bit of a jack of all trades. I think it's important to have more than one thing. You know, you can say, hey, I know how to administer Windows Server 2012 like it's nobody's business. I am the best Server 2012 administrator that there's ever been, and no one can administer Server 2012 like I can administer Server 2012, and maybe that's going to get you in the door. Maybe that's going to help you do one particular thing, but it's always important to be able to say, you know what, I'm no slouch with 2016 either, or I understand how to roll out a Linux distribution, or I can install and set up, an Exchange environment. You need to have more than one skill, and I think it's important to have a range of skills, although it's not bad if they're all in the same realm, if they're all related to one another and the kind of things that you need to know together. Obviously, for those of you who are Windows Server administrators, you know that you're never just a Windows Server administrator. There's always lots of different things that go on, whether it's Active Directory, Exchange, setting up SharePoint, whatever the case might be. That job always entails more than just administering Windows servers. So I guess if I had to pick between the two of those, learning many skills is where I would land. But hey, you know what? Obviously, it's always great to have something that you're truly an expert at, something that you really know how to do well. Certified MCSA years ago when jobs are very hard to get. Got job not using it. How to get the AWS job with only certain no professional experience. Mark, this is a variation on the question of people who come out of school and can only apply to jobs where they want experience. You say, well, how do I get the experience if I can never get the job to begin with, right? You got to walk in and you got to sell yourself. When it comes to getting a job, you gotta make the case for your value and your what makes you stand out. I think, well, a couple of the points here that I still have up on the screen, like bringing your best to the table. You can sit down in AWS and for practically zero money, you can build something, right? You can sit down and build something in AWS, and you can deliver that to a potential interviewer, to a hiring manager, to someone who is considering a job for you. You can say, look, here's the URL, go out and check out what I've built, and I'll talk you through it. I'll tell you what I've done, I'll tell you why I did it, I'll tell you what I learned. Networking is really important here as well. Like I mentioned, I've had a lot of jobs in my life, and I can only think of one of them that I got by sort of anonymously responding to a public job posting. And even that was done through a recruiting company. Every job I've ever had has been via a friend, via a contact, through networking, where I said, hey, this is what I'm doing, this is what I want to do. So I think the way to get an AWS job with the cert and no professional experience is the same way you get any job when you don't have a lot of experience in that particular field, is you got to demonstrate what you do know, and you got to demonstrate why what you already know translates well to what they're looking for. And in your case, you've been working with your MCSA for years and years. It's not like AWS represents some new alien, technology from a different dimension. It's just a slightly different way of doing the things that you already need to do. You learned one, you've learned the second one, you can look that interviewer right in the eye and you can say, you know what, I know how to do these things, I know how to work with this. Whatever the professional experience, that's just the gravy that's going to come with time. Let's see, and Neil, this is going to be my last one because I really like this question. How can I make learning about the cloud fun? And fun is all in capitals there. Neil, I would take out about the cloud and I say, how can I make learning fun? Learning is fun, and well, at least it is for me. Maybe that's why I love this job. If you're not finding learning fun, you're learning about the wrong thing. You got to find ways to apply it to what you like and what you want to do. As a point, as an example, I learned how to program when I was 13 years old, and I know, whatever, it sounds like I'm bragging, but I don't mean to brag. I learned how to program when I was 13 years old because I was playing video games, and I wanted to learn how to make video games, and that's what made programming fun for me. That's why I was able to learn how to do it, because I was 100% certain that I was going to grow up and become a video game programmer, and I learned programming. I spent 3 years there learning how to do it. That was what made learning fun for me, because it was something that I was engaged in and I wanted to learn about. What are your hobbies? How can you apply learning about the cloud or learning about any IT technology to the things that you like to do? I don't know, maybe you like to bicycle. So you know what? Learn about how you could use the cloud to make a bicycle designing application. Maybe you like to homebrew your own beer. Well, learn about how you could use the cloud to make a cool homebrewed beer application. I'm just throwing things out here. Everyone has got things that they find fun. Everyone has things that they enjoy. When it comes to learning, if you make learning about that instead of learning about the technology, I think that you will find it fun. And this is true for everyone. Learning just is fun. We are hardwired from an evolutionary standpoint. We are programmed to learn, to love learning. You just got to make sure that it's something that you want to learn. You got to make sure that you're enjoying it. So it's absolutely a great question. Find a way to make the learning fun, even if it's just rewarding yourself with M&Ms every time you get a quiz question right. So yeah, with that, I want to say thanks to everyone for joining, for asking so many questions, so many great questions. This is really good. We're gonna get these typed up and try to get answers to them out in the next couple of days, because there's just so many, and I don't want to leave anyone hanging. But thanks so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. And with that, Jack, I'll turn it over to you to sign us off.